Доброго дня, шановні колеги, друзі, учасники. Сьогодні ми розпочинаємо наш другий день форуму, 5-го міжнародного форуму практики
Good morning, dear colleagues, participants. Today we are going to start our second day of the forum. Yesterday you were very active in the chat box. Please write your questions, comments. You can use the raised hand function and we will give you an opportunity to ask a question. So today we have Konstantin Plosky, Pausi Foundation, Roman Nikitenko, Head of Communications Department of the Center for Public Communications and Information. And online we have Urzula Majewska, Social Innovation Lab in Gdynia City, Poland. Nana Tavdumadze, Head of Staff of Ozurgeti Municipality Assembly, Georgia. And Alexei Kovalenko, Council of Europe, consultant, methodologist, developer of the SGB model. At this very plenary session, we are going to meet you, new practitioners, and I would like to start with a Polish experience. So we have Urszula Majewska here with us. Urszula, can you hear us? Yes, I can hear you properly. Good morning. Good morning. Julia, I've heard that in Poland you have such a notion as deliberative participatory budget. Can you tell us what it's all about and in what way you implement it in Poland? And of course, we would like to hear more about experience of your city, Gdynia city. In the first place, I would like to express my gratitude and say hello. It's great to represent my city here. It's nice to see that you are physically there, that not everybody is there over internet. Well, I would like to share my experience, of course, but answering this question, I would like to tell you at once that I'm not going to give some definitions. I'm going to tell you in what way I understand that. So, we are talking about participatory budgeting, and in Poland, as you may know, for 2 years, we have this special law which introduced certain frameworks or limits for the participatory budgeting. So actually, we are doing our best to have this type of budgeting. I don't think it's a full-fledgedly participatory budgeting. So what it's all about for me and in what way we are implementing it, deliberation, as you may know, it's creation of the space which gives an opportunity to think and develop some common projects, which allows having a dialogue between civil servants and residents where we have common understanding and where we try to find some useful tools to have something resembling at least participatory budgeting. And this is not only offering of some projects, because as you may know, in Poland, we have a model which is quite competitive, where residents provide some projects and then other citizens vote for these projects. Now we are at the stage of learning how to draw up these projects. So I try to develop these projects as a citizen with civil servants, with other residents of my town. The second level would be verification, where we have a look at this project, whether it's viable or not viable, whether it's feasible or not feasible. So at this very stage of verification, we improve the project. And also, we discuss it with politicians, with all of them interested parties, and deliberation is something continuous, so to say. This is something you constantly do to improve the model and the participatory budgeting in general. And you try to alter and change it from time to time for it to go hand in hand with all the challenges. So, Ira, you were asking what it means for my town, for my city. Let's have a look from the practical point of view. In Gdynia, we have two levels of participatory budgeting. The first level would be within the level of rayons or regions. So in Gdynia, or maybe districts in Gdynia, there are 21 districts. Well, at this grassroots level, at the district level, we try to initiate some projects with due account of the needs and strategies which are being formulated, initiated by local councils, city halls, and all the councils are included into the process. What is also very important and where we introduce even more deliberation would be the municipal level projects. That's the next level. So here, these projects are being developed in the course of workshops, and we try to arrange it in an appropriate way, because these big projects, extensive major projects, and the cost of such projects would be more than 1 million zloty, and it shall respond to the needs and meet the needs of all the citizens of the city. So we invite a maximum 100 people who, in the course of 3 workshops, together with civil servants and other residents, develop these projects. So, between these workshops, we conduct verification. Once again, through the civil servants, for them to have a look whether these very projects are moving in an appropriate direction, whether we are on the right track. And we subdivide this projects, or maybe even groups into those which would like to implement similar projects. And every subgroup has got their own moderator. So the process was changing with years. And, every year we were learning something new. So the process as it is now was developed 2 years ago. At first, we selected several projects after these workshops, though it was very difficult because we've managed to have just the first meeting offline. Then we started working online. What is important for us? We are trying not to take up just one idea, but we want the citizens to be thinking about the whole city. It's very difficult because people come with their ideas, with their projects, and we try to extend those projects for people to think out of the box. This year, unfortunately, we will try to do everything online. That's unfortunately because, as yesterday was mentioned, face-to-face participation is very important because it gives us better results at the end of the day, but it won't be possible, unfortunately. But what we also did, looking at the challenges posed in front of us or before us by the pandemic, we are thinking to get adapted to the climate change, because what is going on in the world now, I believe it is all related to the climate change as well. So we need to influence the climate change as well. In Poland, we already have a green budget, but we would like to go once again beyond everything pertaining to climate change. And another practice I was mentioning, this other level of self-training, when you think what you can improve. Every year we carry out evaluation. We try to do that from the very beginning till the very end, and we involve the councils, city councils, municipal councils to that process, and every year we introduce some changes. And as I've mentioned, this year we've created the systematic budget, as we called it. But the budget has changed a lot. The amount of the budget grew threefold. The number of projects grew ninefold. And of course, it depends on the money available. The frequency of voting somehow goes down. Less and less people vote. But at first, we were discussing just infrastructure projects. Now we are discussing them all. And that's important because we try to implement all this together with the residents of our city for it to have this participation component. Well, so far, that's it. I've tried to show you some example of this deliberational processes, though I want to reiterate, I don't like this name, deliberational budgets. 2 years ago, we started with this and started using this term, but it complicated our lives a little bit because this very law was introduced, and now, according to this law, it is mandatory to vote. And actually, unfortunately, it's not possible to meet and deliberate everything, discuss it all. It complicates our lives.
Да, действительно, очень жаль, что так происходит, потому что, ну, по своему...
It's very bad that it's happening like this. I was in Poland and we saw different approaches, different practices, in what way cities are implementing these approaches. And this practice is very interesting. Actually, you have these discussions. That's great. I strongly hope that everything will be okay. And we have some questions from the chat box.
Питають, на русском, да?
So the questions. In what way do you take into account the number of citizens within the framework of the participatory budgeting? Yes, so you know, every city has got various number of residents, as well as every district. I don't understand the question. What do you mean, taken into account? Like, who is developing the budget, or what do you mean? Maybe whether there is a coefficient. You mean coefficient of participation? In what? Or in what way the budget is split into the district? Oh, yeah. Now I understand. So actually, how much money from the budget goes to this or that district? We take that into account. And we take into account number of residents of the district. We take into account the territory, meaning what's the area of the territory, number of residents, and we also take into account the infrastructure there. And we define the amount per every district. So it does not actually depend on the number of residents only. What is also important, if money from the previous year was not used, they will be used the next year.
Например, в голосовании не приходят все.
And if not all the projects are voted for, but you know, some project was almost voted for. It lacked several votes. It's like a little bit under the threshold. Then district councils may add a little bit of money, give a little bit of money for those projects to be still implemented. Or maybe donors may give some amount of money for the projects to be implemented. And we also have prizes for those whose projects were really interested, but the projects did not pass. Urshula, we have another question from Laura. Have you polled the citizens whether they like this type of budget?
Что больше доверяют вашему местному правительству?
Have they expressed the opinion that now they trust the budgetary process more and trust the authorities? Well, there were this typical surveys, so to say, with these direct questions. And we cannot tell you like this many people gave such an answer and those people gave that answer. We are just conducting an evaluation, and we are asking people randomly what they think about it all, whether the changes are positive or for better or not. And they are answering these questions, and they are saying that they don't like some city projects. They, for example, didn't like the fact that they had to wait with their projects and that their projects were altered in the course of the discussions. So they wanted their projects to be accepted as they were initially. Then, speaking about the trust, there's another important thing, in what way these projects are being implemented at the end of the day, and it influences actually the level of trust. In Gdynia, we still have projects which have not been implemented from the previous years, and we see the questions, how come it was not implemented?
Это не все, еще реализация проектов, а самое
So the
главное.
process is not all. Implementation of the projects is vital to sustain the trust. And, you know, the best process can be spoiled by the enforcement if the project is not implemented. But in Warsaw, we see that participatory budgeting was helping with the level of trust.
Еще один последний вопрос от Дако.
And the last question from Daco. In what way you were involving people to the discussion of the project? Well, I gave you one example. So we had these workshops to discuss. Then, second of all, we were creating or conducting meetings for the residents of the city, where they could have discussed their projects in districts, you know, because we have this district councils. And at these meetings, everyone was welcomed, the budget was presented there, and some ideas were expressed right there and then.
Голосованием идет тоже презентация проектов, но здесь как бы
Also, we have a revoting procedure if we have some doubts.
показать, но здесь более индивидуально идет, как бы промоция.
And we have more individual approach. Here we try to discuss all these projects with the authors for them to improve their projects and these projects to be revoted for later on. But a very good example would be these workshops I was referring to, where people get together and develop these projects. And another question, sorry. So, whether in Poland people are sending and offering these projects all year around or within some specific period of time? Alexander Ustemenko is asking. So, you know, this we are talking about budget, which is why it has to happen within the certain window. Also, there is a local initiative, and also the law prescribes a document or the time frame, actually, the time frame within which citizens may send their projects. And at this local level, they may send them all year around. In Gdynia, there are also other approaches. We call it local fund. And within this local fund, you can also offer your projects, but that is a local example. But this is not as with participatory budgeting, where you just offer something and you forget about this. In this second case I'm referring to, the person has to participate in the implementation of the project. And I'd like to answer the question of Andre, whether after the workshop we are selecting the best ideas. Oh, I'm sorry that I'm having a look at the chat box myself. So I just saw that very question. So we are selecting the projects in the course of voting. We are developing these projects all together at the workshop, and the residents are voting for two lists. There is one of a district level and one of a municipal level. So far, there was one project which was winning all the time. So people invested so much effort into the development of this project. So what do we do with those which were not voted for, which did not win? But there are examples when civil servants are inspired by certain projects and they try to implement them by some other way. Thank you, Urshula, for your experience. Unfortunately, we don't have much time. But I believe we can have a separate meeting and discuss your approaches. Victoria? Yes, Konstantin. Starting with the previous year in Ukraine, various towns, cities, and communities started implementing school participatory budgeting. Why? And why implementation of this school participatory budgeting, why it became possible, and what is the future of this school participatory budgeting? The mic doesn't work. Does it work now? Yes, perfect. Hello, dear participants of the forum. Thank you for the question. I would like to give an answer in the following way. Why do we need involving young people? Why do we need participation of young people? Why they are eager to participate? And this will allow us understanding the essence of the school participatory budgeting. Let me exemplify. In one of the cities in Ukraine, they are welcoming and accepting the budgets developed by school children. And the principal of the school, where children do so, asked children to think about projects which pertain to improvement of the situation with equipment, furniture in the school, then, I don't know, maybe equipping gyms and school premises with some training materials, with some pieces of technology. And there was this great discussion around this of, so, you know, for me, right now, from the viewpoint of an adult, a 45-year-old adult, I understand the motivation of the principal of that school. What will children offer? They will offer, I don't know, something which won't live long. But the director means what? If you equip the classroom in an appropriate way, this will last longer. This is investment into a long-term perspective, right? This is a long-term vision. And I understand that principal of the school, the director of that school. He tries to build the understanding of mid-term and long-term perspective in these children. And now, once again, from the viewpoint of a 45-year-old adult, that's my understanding, let me tell you. And, you know, this goes hand in hand with my personal story. I have a son. He doesn't want to go to church. He turned 12 and he said, I don't want to go to church. And I was sitting and thinking, well, but that's the major thing you can have in life. When you are in the valley of death, you will feel sorry that you were not going to church. That is going to be a personal catastrophe of my son. How come you don't want to go to church? I don't understand that. From the viewpoint, once again, of a parent and of an adult. And here I have this major question I have to answer. And by the way, let me mention a paradox. I was writing a thesis on involvement of young people and youth, adolescents, and I was dealing with involving and engagement of young people when I was still young. And now I have some doubts already about this working with youth, involvement of youth. And yeah, I don't understand in what way to work now. And you know, we have to use the stick and the carrot, you know, and now young people are quite aggressive. They are willing to break something, to protest against something. And, you know, they want to express themselves in such a way. So now it's very difficult for me to understand in what way to deal with young people in this world, which is why for me, you know, the sense of involving youth is as following. I think about our schools, about participatory budgeting, and I believe that, well, it's like a cliche for me that we just need to do that full stop, and we don't profoundly understand the purpose, like for what we need to do that. I believe we've lost that feeling why. I don't know how to answer, once again, this why question.
предположить, что это бы хорошо
I'm
было
just
бы.
gonna suggest that speaking about school participatory budget and engagement of the youth, we just have to try and reflect. Everybody who's engaged into this work, they have to get back to the roots and understand why we need to engage them. It's not that we have to do this because we have to do this. We don't have enough knowledge or competence to understand why we need to engage young people. We need to have a purpose. And there are a lot of books about engaging the youth. It's a new area of today. In the early 90s, this specific area was just shaping up. There was a committee established in the UN in the 90s responsible for working with the youth. That's a recent change. Well, it's 30 years, it's one generation, but it's still recent. And I was looking at different things. I looked at different approaches. And I found one important approach about values, why we have to engage the youth. And there were two main things I remember from that reading. So the transition from seeing them as a problem to seeing them as a solution to the problem. And the other thing was, instead of creating good programs for the youth, please create good relationships with them. Very nicely said, but I think, speaking of adults, speaking of the organizers of this kind of engagement and youth participatory budgeting, and other ways to engage the public and the youth. So we have to have the energy to accept this Sturm und Drang, as they say in German, and respect. You know, these things do not come easy. So they are born from inside. And that is my ontology, which I'm presenting to you. We have to do some reflection again and again. And every new generation, according to the researchers, they have new kinds of reflection. Why reflection? Because, you know, we are talking about different tools, such as school participatory budget. The question is, why do we engage them? And this building of relationships with young people, that is something very dear to my heart. That's empathy, communication that demands a lot of enthusiasm and spirit. That's all I wanted to say. Now, speaking about the future of the participatory budget, 5 years ago, when the participatory budget idea came about, it was unrolled in some of the first municipalities, and people were asking, what's the future of PB? And it's been 5 years already. And there's been some research, science-based research or evidence-based research, and people say that it is very hard to see the tangible result. You know, we spoke 5 years ago about consolidation, unification. Now the researchers cannot find any good solid evidence saying that people and communities unite because of the participatory budget. So I think that back then, participatory budget began as an inspiration and vision from some people, groups of people. They were saying that this is a good thing, an important thing, and it's progressing like this, in spite of lack of research evidence. And this forum is a good indicator. There are people who are inspired, people who are committed, they want to pursue certain idea, they organize forums like this. And people in municipalities participate in organizing PBs and in schools as well. You know, there are people who are inspired, who are committed and who have the trust into this process, and there will be progress. Maybe we will not see any a solid evidence confirming that it produces results, but I think that's how things happen globally. There are just a few people who have a belief in something, and then things start moving. That's it. Now we have some questions from the chat box. There was this question. People are asking which communities already implemented school PB in Ukraine. And you started kind of answering this question. You said Vinnytsia, Obuhiev, Novovlaska Amalgamated Community. Konstantin, what can you tell us about this? What kind of information you have? Kremenchuk, for instance. They are receiving some project proposals from the school children. That's what I know. That's what's happening right now. And other municipalities, Ivano-Frankivsk, just someone mentioned, Slovyansk, Zaporizhia, Kramatorsk. Now we have a question from Monica. I'm keen to know, what is the source of funding for school participatory budgets? Local budgets, maybe? Based on Ukrainian model, those are local municipal budgets. They have a separate designated program for the youth. That's where the money is coming from. And it's for the youth and with the youth. The PAUSI Foundation launched similar work in some municipalities. They tested participatory budgeting in those municipalities, and I think it was not really unprepared. They were prepared. They were trying to establish some communication with the youth in those municipalities. They were doing some workshops. They were discussing the idea of the school participatory budget. They were modeling this process. The school children were modeling it, and they were trying to understand why they need this. They were also trying to bring the teachers on board and the school administration so that they can all be engaged into this process. So we will see. And Agnieszka is now asking, and it's a question and a comment. So why engage the youth? Because we believe that it's our value and it helps develop other values such as trust, cooperation, and collaboration. I agree. Yes, unfortunately, these values in my case got diluted somehow. So I envy the person who cherishes those values. I have a lot of children, and it's very hard to work with you, but you have practical experience. I'm now asking Alexei Kovalenko to get in touch with us. Well, it seems like he has some technical issues. Roman has a question on the same topic. It's not really a question, it's a quick comment. Speaking about long-term thinking ahead, it made me think, actually, about school PB. And I think that that is very much normal. When school children are not thinking long-term, they're thinking about some day-to-day things, some creative projects, which are not producing any comprehensive change. But school PB is supposed to educate and develop people to think differently and think long-term, and also realize whether these projects are functional or not. So it's the school that is preparing you for the future. That's the school that is helping you make decisions about your future based on some specific benchmarks. Right, it's kind of project management school, yeah, but in regular school with real cases. Konstantin, can you please answer another question? So how do you identify the need in introduction of school PB? That's a very good question. And I'm sitting here and thinking, school PB is needed to also the adults as much as the kids. Because, you know, we have to introduce this relationships. We need to introduce trust. We need to learn how to trust, as Agnieszka mentioned, because it's a big thing. It's a way of building trust, confidence. So we, the adults, probably need this more than school children. This is what I'm gonna say. The experience of different workshops where I took part, specifically on school PB, and we met school children who knew nothing about this idea, and we got together and we told them that the local authorities have this idea, let's discuss it. And their response was, well, it was very positive. And they kept telling me about things which I never thought of before. For instance, in Lviv, we had this workshop for the school children, and we were discussing school PB. And then we had this, role play and discussion of the school budget. And I said, what's the sense behind all this, especially school participatory budget? And the school children used to say very interesting things, speaking of thinking outside the box. So they said because of the school PB, then less young people will have to migrate abroad. And it was unexpected. We halted in our tracks for a second. And it was surprising. See, young children actually can think long term, if you trust in them. If there is trust, if there is confidence, then of course you can find a lot of good things among them. That's it. Right. Right. See, I switched to Russian myself unexpectedly. But you are right. So we have to learn how to trust young people, school children. That is very important. So are we going to move on? In the chat, there are comments saying that in Poland, there is similar experience. Maybe Urszula can speak about this experience in Polish municipalities, schools, if she has information. I can, of course, I can. And if you do not mind, we've got Agnieszka Maszkowska with us, who is in charge of a special project on the same topic. She is in the chat box right now, and she is working on school participatory budget. We do not have a lot of direct experience, first-hand experience, but still we have some experience about school participatory budget, and we have experience how to engage students, school children into this process. If Agnieszka is ready, then let's bring her online.
Agnieszko, ja powiedziałam, że mogłabyś opowiedzieć o szkolnych budżetach, jeśli nas słyszysz.
We are asking Agnieszka if she can speak about school participatory budgets. Apparently, she cannot hear. No, unfortunately, she is offline. Well, I'm just going to speak briefly. So this oftentimes happens or is implemented through NGOs. This process, the full cycle of this process, means engaging the students. They create ideas, they also create committees, and they monitor implementation. That is very popular. And I agree 100% that it helps generally young people develop. And then on the other hand, you see who is participating. You see who are the members of this participatory budgeting process, and there are a lot of young people, and that is a good way to make them contribute more, because we do have this opportunity in Poland. I don't know if you know about this, but in Polish PB, newborns can participate. Seriously, that is a technical possibility. So everybody can submit a project, no matter how old you are. Anybody can vote. So that is preparing you to adult life. Agnieszka, are you online? Agnieszka will come online very soon. I can see her already. Just gonna make a few comments. Agnieszka also posted a link in the chat box where you can find more information about their results. So dear participants, use that. Agnieszka just mentioned that she cannot speak. Unfortunately, she cannot. We will try and get her connected. Now I see that she's connected. Agnieszka, can you hear us? Start speaking. So she is muted.
Мне кажется, что как бы она отключена, выключена, ей возможность.
Oh, I guess she's muted by host and she cannot unmute herself.
О, замечательно.
Okay, do you hear me? Hello.
Yes.
So thank you for giving me a voice. As Ursula told you before, I'm actually now I'm a coordinator of the project in my region in Poland when we lead 8 processes in 8 schools. It's not maybe a big thing, but it's the first time in our region when we have school participatory budgets. Actually, we are finishing now all the processes in schools. So it was not easy because, of course, as you know, it's the time of pandemic and many schools were closed. Actually, the school were remote. Sorry. Yeah, it was not easy, but you know, for me, the very important thing is to help schools as, let's say, as experts of participation, because for the teachers, for students, it's really, they don't even sometimes know what it is, participatory budget. So I think we have a lot to do as practitioners of public participation to lead the process, to help the process, and we also not only be experts, but we also provide some special workshops for students, for teachers, and it was very important thing. So I wanted to tell that it is important not to let them be alone during that process, to give them knowledge, to give them some special also communication skills, because I think that when you are leading a process in schools, you need a lot of not only knowledge but also social skills as public speeches or communication, cooperation. So it is very important. I would tell you a lot of things, but I don't want to say too long about that, because it's probably a topic for many hours of conversations. So if you have any questions, maybe special questions, or I would answer. And I would also would like to mention that we are now, as a Sosla Foundation, we are coordinator of Erasmus Plus project, when we are preparing some materials, some educational materials based on the best practices across Europe and also the world. And if you are interested, please look at the website. I've mentioned in a chat box the address of the website, and there you will be able to also to upload in the future, next year probably, your best practices from Ukraine, from Georgia, from every country, to show the world the examples of school PB or youth PB, because I think the school PB is one option of engagement of youth, but the second option is to engage more youth in, let's say, normal participatory processes, or organize some special editions for youth, like, for example, now in Finland. In Finland now, there is a special process for project, not maybe only for youth, but the topic of the projects should be addressed to youth. So this is also the way of building trust, building interest in youth stuff. So feel welcome to go to our website and be in touch with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation. And I have two questions. First is, are the selected schools private or public schools? And the second question is, what is the source of funding of implemented projects? Do you have funding from the local budget, or do you have another sources of?
Yes. If we are talking about my project, it was the money from the grant from the special program for NGOs. So it is a national money for the project. I don't think it's the best way to finance that kind of things. I think that municipalities should give money. And in some cities in Poland, there is a school budget financed from the municipal money. For example, in Sosnowiec, this is a city when in every and each school which is ready to do it, there is a possibility to organize school participatory budget. So this is, in my opinion, the best way, the most wide option, and it makes the process stable. I mean, it's not very good when only, like in our case, we have only the money this year to organize the process, to also support financially the schools. But it's the best way when the municipality gives the money every year. So we have some sustainable developing process. It's the best way, I think.
Спасибо большое за
Thank you.
ваш опыт, за то, что вы к нам присоединились.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the experience. Thank you for joining us. Agnieszka Urszula, thank you. Thank you.
Предлагаю перейти к
Let's move on.
Грузии.
Let's discuss experience from Georgia.
Nano Tavtamadze.
Nano Tavtamadze will be speaking. Nano, if you can hear us.
Yes, I can hear you well.
Nano, я думаю, что не только нам с Викой и
So,
Ирина,
it's not just for us, for Vika and myself. It's interesting to learn about participation practices in Georgia. Other participants would love to hear. Can you please tell us more about the quarantine, about the pandemic, about the lockdown, and how it impacted the situation?
With much pleasure. I am happy to be with you today. It's a pleasure also that for the entire year, together with you, with our colleagues, with the Polish and Ukrainian colleagues, we have been in touch and we've been sharing our experience and practices, which is very helpful for us to cope with the challenges that exist around us. I agree with you, Irina. COVID-19 created significant challenges. However, let me also underline that that is also an opportunity for us. If we analyze that from different aspects, from different angles, now it is clear that we need to make decisions in a more speedy manner. We need to be effective and flexible to meet the current circumstances. I have been listening to the previous speakers and I would like to express my respect to all of them. But we have different challenges, especially when we speak about the participatory approaches, and also the response mechanisms are different as well. It will be very interesting to share our experience as well, because innovative technologies now gives an opportunity to meet the needs of citizens. What I mean, first of all, I would like to share an interesting information. The municipality that I represent, that is located in West Georgia, at the seashore, at the coastline of the Black Sea, and it opened open governance partnership together with more than 50 members. And the good beginning was from this PB initiative, because we told them about our practices that we have established. What I want to say, in general, participatory budgeting started by sharing the Polish experience, but it was adapted to the local context, and we came up with a different model. I would like to express my appreciation and gratitude to the Solidarity Fund for support and to our committed partners. Together with them, we were working on that to elaborate these different forms. What I mean, PB has developed in a different format, and we try to respond to COVID-19 challenges because we actively use online platforms, and also we try to evenly distribute the responsibilities. This is the sign of democracy. In fact, and I am not familiar with other examples or other cases, but for the first time, it so happened that electronic voting was available. So there was voting vouchers available for deciding the budget-related issues. The citizens themselves made decisions about how to finance infrastructural projects. Briefly speaking, just to make it easier to understand, it so happened that the money was allocated by the municipality, but it was distributed among the citizens, and every vote of the citizen also had some value attached to that. Then the citizens were self-organized, and then they voted online. They were using the online voting platforms. Now it is possible to do that amid the pandemic, because now we can come up with creative solutions. It is interesting that the new form of public budgeting that was followed by the creation of other models as well. We are now refining that. We have already completed the testing phase, and I can provide specific cases. Let's say Ozurgeti municipality that I represent, they will have hanging gardens. The citizens decided that they needed to plant gardens in certain locations, but the gardens will have many functions. It will be multifunctional gardens, and in these multifunctional spaces, the citizens decided to have the possibility or to have the location for local council meetings, for public gatherings. So with our involvement, also considering the needs and interests of the citizens, also taking into consideration their proposals, also by working with our partners, NGOs, we elaborated the new model of participation, so that how we can take into account and meet all the interests of many different stakeholders. Mr. Volodymyr spoke about shifting some activities outdoors in open spaces. Yes, this is what we did. We have identified 10 projects, not us, but the populations themselves, because they voted for the projects themselves, and they did all the verification. We did not really have much red tape included, and I think it was a good news to have very little bureaucracy. And then things were taken out of the buildings. And now we discuss the budgetary issues outdoors. And then we discussed what was the current state of implementation of the budget, and it was the space for submitting the new proposals. I think it was very interesting, and we signed a so-called civic declaration. The signatories are the public officials, decision makers, just ordinary citizens, NGOs, and we agreed that every year we will do the public budgeting, participatory budgeting. And this was kind of something like the memorandum of understanding. There was another model while implementing the projects. Let's see, citizen engagement. When the project is implemented, I think it is very important to have the citizens actively engaged at every stage, starting from the initiation until the selection and through all the stages. And we elaborated a very interesting mechanisms and models that will create that will be as guidance guidelines We mentioned that the libraries were not involved in this process, but now, as of today, we have the library in Ozurgeti, which is actively involved. It has organizational, technical functions to perform. Also, every citizen can go to the library. They can master their skills that will be necessary for communicating their positions, and also they will stay informed. I think this is a very good model, the model that can be adapted or adjusted to a certain environment or circumstances. They can be sustainable, they have the future, and they have a unique possibility to use all the resources that are currently available. I think that it is possible to make positive changes through these participatory processes if we make all these processes more active or intensive. And last but not least, and most important thing I can say is that with these kind of approaches, the citizens became more active and we have unprecedented results. And 40% of citizens were involved and they benefited from this participatory budgeting. That's a very high rate. And this gives us a chance to follow up and also to form or to draw up the budget like this. And as our head of the local council says that we are going to roll it out throughout the entire territory of our municipality, which is Ozurgeti municipality. This is what I wanted to share. And let me add one more thing. Last year, when I attended the forum, we were so inspired and we were committed and determined to do something more and something new. I think we did it. And then in the future, hopefully, I will be able to communicate more good news.
Thank you so much, Nana, for your experience. It was very interesting. And we have a question, Konstantin. Yes, hello, Nana. Hello. I have a question. So we know that in Georgia, they try implementing so-called certification of participatory budgeting. Well, as far as I know, you've created a group which was developing the standards, and the cities were getting the certification for their participatory budgeting to meet the standards. So maybe you've been undergoing such certification, and can it actually help cities in development of participatory budgeting?
Thank you very much for this interesting question. And I am a graduate of the advanced training course on participatory budgeting. And once again, I would like to thank the Solidarity Fund because it gives an opportunity to every individual to get a qualified education and also to be an active citizen. But as for the certification of municipalities, that was a great opportunity for every municipality, whichever wanted to be more engaged in the processes and to implement participatory budgeting. These approaches benefited us a lot. And that enabled us to develop these processes more. Yes, municipality certification is a very good process that shows us the progress, where we stand, where we are now, what challenges we're now facing, what we have to overcome. And based on this analysis, then it is possible to develop these processes. And thank you very much for this question. Indeed, it was really very interesting. I think I should have said that, but I missed it.
Если я могу добавить только на вопрос этот. С нами есть Володимир Абраменко.
And I would like to add, we have Volodymyr Abramenko with us, right?
Он может быть добавить
And he can add a bit more as regards in what way it was taking place. Because This is the process which was launched the previous year, and it is based on the standards of participatory budgeting, PB, developed together with municipalities, practitioners, and it is based on some innovative approaches, and someone has to actually help supporting and developing participatory budgeting, PB. Yeah, I just wanted to add about Mr. Volodymyr, because I was a part of that process as well for some time, you know. Thank you, Ursula. And we have a question from the chat box. Nana, please share the results of your survey. We are interested to hear the result.
Currently, we are now identifying the best practices and we are studying that. It is very important that in Georgia we have very good and best practices that are very important to consider. And this is not about one area only. It also implies engagement of citizens in projects, in the project implementation, to be specific, and the respective models. It also implies how it is possible to make the PB processes even more active and also new approaches. The survey results clearly demonstrated that, in fact, majority of municipalities, they opt for sharing the best practices. They are ready to share that. I cannot speak about statistics in regards to the best practices, but as for the municipality certification, we have 9 municipalities that are certified. I think Ursula will agree with me, and there was a consortium. It was a participatory process that exactly, and they identified the municipalities that were then certified. This is not like a contest. This is the evaluation and analysis. This is specifying the ratings or rankings of municipalities. It is very good to act like that because it is more useful and productive than just participation in some contests or in selections. It is a big motivation and a stimulus, these kind of activities. As for individual certification, I would like to say a few words. Individual certification, that is the approach that in terms of active citizens or public servants or NGO representatives, it enables them to evaluate themselves how well participating they are, well, where they stand. Participants like magisters or masters or where they are on that ladder, on this hierarchy. After they undergo the individual certification, then they can start working for developing their communities. They can implement their ideas. It's like a tool for self-realization. But in regards to the certification process, let me tell you that we are now still engaged in this survey or a study. And as a result of the study of these practices, we can really say that it is the irreversible process. It has no alternative, and the support of international community matters a lot. Joint efforts are necessary in order to share the best practices and experience. Let me tell you that, in my opinion, we don't really have the best practice to share. It is now being implemented. It is being done right now. And I think we will have more effective results in the future, especially if we are talking about the reliable and accurate information and challenges posed by the COVID.
Спасибо большое, Нана. Было интересно. Я думаю, что участникам с разных стран это тоже
Thank
было
you
полезно.
so much. It was interesting for the participants from various countries. It was the greatest pleasure, Nana, to see you and hear you. And we are going to move forward to the next clause of the agenda, new participatory practices. Yes, right now we were listening to the experience of Georgia, and I understood, well, I'm ashamed to acknowledge that, but I know nothing about participatory practices in United States, for example. But I'm very glad that we have Roman Nikitenko with us today, who've participated in the professional internship programs in USA. So Roman, please share with us, what kind of participatory practices are there in the city you had your internship in? Thank you for that question. So, in the first place, thank you for an opportunity to present something at this forum. So this internship took place in Georgia State, Atlanta City, and which is the capital of the state at the very same time, and one of the biggest cities of the US South. And for me, I would like to single out 3 tools, which may be familiar to all of you, and others may not be that familiar, but I strongly hope it's going to be interesting for you, because even the tools we already know, they have their own incarnations in various countries. So, the first initiative is called Atlanta City Studio. I should tell you that looks like the project office, which was created by the Department of City Planning of Atlanta for the sake of supporting involvement of the citizens to spatial development of the city. And this project office is concentrated on plenty of the topics we were discussing today, meaning it is concentrated on deliberation or deliberative concept of involving citizens. And in what way it is different from the city planning department activities? Well, the key specialists who work in Atlanta City Studio in that project office, they include not just architects and urban planners, but also we see specialists in involvement of citizens, in active engagement of citizens. There are people who have some other qualifications and experience of developing some social studies. And another peculiar feature of this method would be that it is focused on certain territory in the city, and then they shift their focus once every 2 years. So at that very clearly defined territory, and by the way, when I was there at my internship, it was South Downtown, the center of the city practically. And one of the tasks, as I've mentioned, would be engagement and involvement of the residents of those small communities, of those districts, to the processes of creation of public spaces. And that is, so to say, an urbanistic studio. And the major thing to mention here would be that the scale of these projects may differ a lot, maybe really vary, starting from tactical urbanism, which does not require significant spendings from the municipal budget, up to quite extensive infrastructure projects. And one of the interesting projects there was the project dedicated to transformation of a big transportation hub in the city. How to put it right? Sorry, I'm trying to find the words. Oh, do you mean like transportation hub? Yeah, transportation hub called 5 Points, meaning that's the bus station, that's the underground subway station, and the goal of one of the projects was to popularize public transport, because that's quite a challenge for big cities in the United States, that too many people are using their private transport, which overloads the city and makes it less comfortable for pedestrians, for cyclists. And the pedestrian infrastructure and bicycle infrastructure is underdeveloped as a result of this. So the essence of the project was to make this key public transport stations more comfortable for the citizens and inspire some new senses, so to say, into this spots. And one of the projects was creation of a soccer field. You just exit the subway station and you see a big soccer stadium in front of you. If there is such a technical opportunity, can you show the picture? I have a picture. You can show it on this. Oh yeah, I'm interested in what way it looks like. You just exit the subway station and you can start playing soccer? Well, picture number one, if you can find it. Well, it's very difficult to do that all now. So, and another project is related to this station. It was the creation of some vegetables farm. That's bad that we cannot have a look at the pictures because it would be very interesting. Can you find the picture, please? Yeah, please, guys, help us out. Find the picture. We would like to have a look what it looks like. Well, yes, that's kind of how to put it right? Like a small container with soil, and any citizen can lease some small plot and grow parsley there. Yeah, right, you are. Parsley, dill, whatever. Even the mayor of the city has got his own, in quote marks, parcel of land, and he is harvesting something from there. Yeah, it looks like this. It was almost a success. Did you see that on your screens? Yeah, so then I have a question. Who is initiating these ideas? This very institution is producing them, or what? Oh, yeah, thank you for the question. So the key function of this project office is involvement of the citizens to development of this project. The process may take from 2 to 6 months, meaning they analyze the problem. For example, why people don't want using public transport. Then they develop some action plan, and then together with citizens, they discuss this idea. That's the public discussion. And this studio, it shifts its attention from one district to the other. As I mentioned, every 2 years, there's the shift. And every 2 years, the project is being implemented in some other district. Yeah, so they influence the life of the district. Oh, now we see what it looks like. Roman? Yes. When I had my internship there, I don't know even how to call them. There were more of these containers. And maybe the picture of the soccer field now?
І, власне, цей футбольний майданчик, саме футбольний...
That very soccer field, I've never seen it empty. Be it morning, day, evening, and every time there was someone, people were using this space. And Before that, it was just abandoned industrial concrete space, and it was not used anyhow as a public space. And here you may see implementation of this nice idea to popularize the public transport. And one of the options, such a project. I believe we can proceed to the second tool from this picture of junction. That's neighborhood planning unit. That's the system of councils in Atlanta, which was created in 1974. And the first mayor of Afro-American descent initiated its creation. The idea was to involve Afro-Americans to the processes of managing the city.
Як багато хто
Well,
знає,
as many of you know, in the 60s, in the 70s, in the South, there was huge segregation. There were huge conflicts between different categories of population belonging to different races. And they created a mechanism for representative functions, for bringing people excluded from political processes, so they suggested to use the system. In Atlanta, in total, there are 25 advisory units like this. And they are responsible for oversight and recommendations for the mayor, for the city council, regarding zoning, urban planning, and many other things. They take care of municipal policy and its implementation. Each and every planning unit, neighborhood planning unit, I guess we can translate it verbatim like this. So they meet once a month. And the agenda for this meeting is drafted by the urban planning department of the city. And then they are discussing the agenda, the items on the agenda with the public. Usually there are about 15 to 20 items. And the members of the board vote. So the members of the board of this unit, they usually would vote. And what else is interesting? They would usually invite a police officer to the meeting. So he's responsible for this specific neighborhood. And anybody, anyone, any resident of this unit can, of this neighborhood, they can talk to this police officer, express concerns, because I attended 3 meetings like this. And the local residents were saying, look, you know, there is this white van which is cruising around in this neighborhood, and nobody knows why. What's the purpose? But then they realized later that it was owned by a utility company that was doing some maintenance work. So the local council members attend the meetings as well. They represent that respective constituency. And they can speak about their local legal initiatives. They can receive consulting from the public regarding new policies. So people are asking me to hurry up. Now I'm narrowing down on the participatory budget because that is the most interesting component for the forum participants. So participatory budget in the city of Atlanta. You know, it was a pilot project of PB, and it only covered the downtown of the city. Speaking about fun facts, so the budget was probably one of the largest PB budgets ever per 1,000 residents. Because again, downtown in those cities is usually hosting a lot of businesses, not a lot of regular residents. So people commute mostly. And for 26,000 of population in that downtown area, they spend more than $1 million US. So a very interesting approach to receiving project proposal. So there are only two questions in the process. So what is the problem in the municipality and what's your plan to address the problem? So what's your proposal? So speaking about drafting the budget, speaking about the details in your description, technical documents, all that is the responsibility of the transportation department. And this is very important because again, this is the money which could not be allocated from the special fund. In 2017, the residents of the city of Atlanta voted on a referendum and they voted for additional tax. And that tax money was supposed to be spent on developing transportation infrastructure in the city. In the downtown area, they could not find consensus how to better use these funds, or a larger portion of these funds. $1 million was unallocated. And they decided to use this open and democratic tool. The council member from that specific neighborhood offered to launch a pilot PB project addressing this problem. Because again, there were a lot of disputes between different stakeholders of this process. Local businesses wanted a pedestrian street. They wanted to build more shops, cafes, maybe restaurants, while other residents, they wanted to have bicycle lanes. Some people wanted something else. So they decided to find a good solution, and PB was that solution for them. And there is one little trick about this. The participation tools and mechanisms, they're not supposed to be an objective by itself. They're supposed to be used to address a problem in the city, in the community. And as for me, this is a very good example, a very telling example, whereby a specific participation tool was addressing specific problems instead of being used just for the sake of participation. Because oftentimes there are problems arising around this. How do you evaluate this or that participatory practice? Is it fulfilling the purpose, as Konstantin mentioned? Or maybe it's not fulfilling it. So we have to have a clear objective behind the project or any tool that is being discussed. So then it's way easier to evaluate, to establish indicators based on which you do your evaluation process. That's it. So as far as I understand, this process is ongoing. Right. The voting for project proposals is over and they have transitioned to the implementation phase. Right. So when the plenary session is over, please use the chat box and send us links so we can watch all this, because it's very interesting. I'm very keen to know how they do it. So to summarize today's discussion, allow me to say this. I originally from the village in Zaporizhzhia Oblast. In my school, in the history class, there was this banner or poster saying, those who do not know their past, they are not worthy their future. So I think that it's important for everybody to learn about today. You have to know what's happening today. You have to learn from the experience of the others, because it doesn't really matter how old are you. It's important how many paths you have taken. So you've learned about many different cases. Yesterday and today, you've learned about different participatory practices, and also you've learned about experiences from the others. And we have really taken a lot of paths with you. So thank you so much, dear speakers. Thank you, dear participants, for sharing your experience with us. Right now, we're going to have a break, 30 minutes. Then at 1 p.m., please visit the next session. We will be discussing values, procedures, how do we build trust, how do we transform participation. And apart from all this, in the chat, you will find a link to the survey form. We are asking you to please fill it out in the course of the forum. Thank you so much, and I will see you at 1 p.m. Stay tuned. Thank you.